at Bible camps and often at worship at college was the song, I Decided to Follow Jesus. If you remember it, it's an old song from a long time ago. You know how it goes? I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. That song was influential in many ways in many lives, including mine at the time. And a song that called me to follow after Jesus. It was one of those little things that happened in life that as I look back, I see it as a significant thing, that God was using that song in me. Whenever that song was sung, two things happened inside of me. First of all, I knew that I really wanted to follow Jesus. Secondly, I also knew that that was very hard. And often I doubted if I really was following Jesus. So I had this love-hate relationship with this song. I knew that God was calling me, and I knew at least in part of me wanted to follow. But I also knew that part of me was weak and helpless. I wanted to follow, but sometimes I couldn't do that. And the part of the song that always confronted me most was that phrase, no turning back, no turning back. I realized that following Jesus was an all or nothing venture, and sometimes that was frightening for me. There is a character to our gospel lesson for today that is exactly like that. The gospel lesson is really about the matter of following Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. What we need to know is that this story really starts with the call to Jesus to venture forth in his life, to put himself out there on behalf of the world. No turning back for Jesus either anymore. This is the very point in Luke's gospel where Jesus turns toward Jerusalem, toward what he knows is his destiny, which is to suffer and to die on the cross. In the story of the Transfiguration that comes just a few verses ahead of our text, Jesus is told by Moses and Elijah about his departure, his exodus, that he is to accomplish there in Jerusalem. And so this is a call to Jesus to follow God's will, a call to go to Jerusalem to suffer, to die. No turning back, no turning back. I'm sure thankful that Jesus doesn't call me and you to do that kind of thing, to go forth knowing that we are going to be crucified at the end of the journey. But his call to us is to follow. No turning back, no turning back. And that's hard for any of us. The difficulty of the challenge is laid out for us in three examples within our text. There is the man who volunteers to follow after Jesus. I'll come, I'll be with you. To which Jesus says, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. In other words, following Jesus will cost you everything, and you will need to depend solely upon Jesus. We don't know if this man followed or not. There's another who Jesus calls and whose response is simply that he has something more important to do right now. Actually, burying the dead is a pretty important thing. But the point is that following Jesus will mean putting Jesus first ahead of everything else that comes along in life. To put it in terms that we might understand, we are called by God to worship regularly. There's a commandment about it after all. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. But every time we say to Jesus, I have something more important to do than worship, we are like this man. I have to catch up on the things I didn't get done during the week. I have to get my rest because Sunday's the only morning I can sleep in. I have to be at the ball game. I have to do this or I have to do that. Following Jesus means putting Jesus ahead of everything else. And there's a third person in the text who is also called by Jesus, who responds with what seems like a pretty reasonable request. I just want to go home and say goodbye first. But one wonders how long that goodbye is going to be, and if this person will ever really catch up with Jesus and follow him. Jesus says to this person, anyone who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. No turning back. No turning back. It's this last example that I want to focus on for a while and try to put it into the context of our own personal life, and then also in the life of us together as a congregation. It's a wonderful image that Jesus uses. Most of us probably understand it pretty well, especially if we've done a little plowing in our day. I did some plowing in my day, and one of the first things that my father taught me is that when you're going to lay up a land, when you're going to make that first furrow, you have to pick something at the other end of the field and drive straight toward it, and don't look back. Don't look back. If you look back, you're going to wander all over the place, and that furrow will not be straight. No turning back. No turning back. And it's the same about following Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. Only now the point that is fixed for us is to keep our eyes on Jesus and don't look back. Because when we look back, when we look away from Jesus, we falter and we get lost. Following Jesus is pretty serious business. And Jesus knows that, so he says, don't look back. Don't look back. Actually, Jesus is using the image of Elisha's call that we heard in our first lesson from 1 Kings. Elisha was out plowing too. But did you notice what Elisha did when Elijah called him? Elisha was a wise man, and he knew that the call of his plow, his yoke of oxen back home, would always be there as a possible interference. So Elisha took his oxen and he slaughtered them, and he took his plow and he burned it up to cook the meat, and he gave it all away. And then he turned and followed. No turning back. No turning back. The wise thing that Elisha did was to get rid of everything that had the potential to draw him away from what he needed to do. It was a no turning back moment for Elisha. Now I want to try to put all this in the context of our own personal lives. First of all, briefly in that way, Jesus is calling each one of us to follow him, and that's serious business. To be sure, there's a life of joy that is available to each and every one of us as a follower of Jesus, but we need to follow first if we're ever going to know the joy of being a follower. It's the joy that people experience when they respond to natural disasters like Katrina in New Orleans, or like the joy that we and our confirmation students experienced when they raised $1,780 to help with the earthquake in Haiti, or the joy that some experienced when they went to help out at Parkersburg after the tornado. It's the joy of knowing that God's purpose is in your life, and that being a part of it is the source of joy. When I sang and heard that song in college, I had decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. It was really Jesus graciously calling me. Jesus is calling you personally to follow him and not be distracted by the world around you, not delay so that you take care of some other business first, and realizing that it will not be easy, but it is the most amazing and greatest thing that has ever happened in your life. There is a no turning back moment for each one of us today as well. Jesus says, follow me. No turning back. No turning back. Will you follow him? Right after my message today, we're going to sing a hymn. And I hope you'll pay really close attention to the words in this hymn, because it is the voice of God's Spirit calling to each one of us about Jesus. In a way, it is Jesus singing his song to us. So let him sing to you out of the song that we will sing.